Hi, I'm Tony Northup, and this is my 1-hour tutorial for owners of the Pentax K-1. I'm going to show you how to use every part of it. You might already know some of this stuff. You'll certainly know how to put the lens on and stuff, so there's stuff in there for beginning photographers that might not apply to you. Look at the description in the table of contents for a table of contents that will allow you to skip forward to a specific time in the video. You can just click the individual times. If you have questions about which lenses you should get, I have suggestions at the end, so look for that too. If you have a different camera or your friends have different cameras and you want to show them this tutorial or a tutorial like this, visit this URL, sdp.io/tutorials. We have just about every modern camera there, and the tutorials are free. I'm not going to cover every single menu item in here. There's some stuff that I just don't find that practical in the real world. Various things to change your JPEGs. I tend to shoot RAW, and we'll explain what that means in just a little bit. But I'm going to explain everything that I think is practical for real world photography. So you might still, if you want to know every little feature, you can refer to your manual for a few things, but I'm going to replace the manual for just about everything important. First of all, I'm going to go over the physical controls on the camera, starting with the memory cards. This is really obvious. The memory card slot pulls forward like that and then pops open, and you'll find room for two different SD cards. They just push in and they'll click like that. I'd strongly suggest using both memory cards. SD cards are pretty inexpensive and you don't really need an expensive one. But putting two cards in there allows you to configure the camera to write to both cards at the same time, and that can really be a lifesaver because memory cards don't fail often. But when they do fail, you lose all the pictures on it, or you might just have a picture or two corrupted, but they might be important pictures to you. I strongly suggest using two cards and using the dual writing capability. You can configure how the camera writes to the cards to make sure that it writes to both cards. I'm going to turn the camera on here by moving the switch to the on button, and then I'll hit the menu button. And you can see I can use the directional pad here to move through the menu. On the camera icon on page 2, there's memory card options, and I'll just scroll down with the directional pad here and then scroll to the right to select it. And you can see I have a few different options. I can just write to a single card. I can write to both cards at the same time using either RAW or JPEG, or I can write RAW files to one card and JPEG files to another. RAW files are higher quality but bigger memory files. If you're not using Wi-Fi at all, I suggest writing RAW files to both cards. That way, if you have a failure, you won't lose a bit of data. If you are using Wi-Fi, you can't really use Wi-Fi with the RAW files, so it helps to have JPEG files written to the second card. JPEG files aren't a perfect backup, but they're better than nothing. So when I'm out and I want to throw something on Instagram quickly, I'll choose this third option here, which is RAW 1, JPEG 2, and I'll talk about Wi-Fi in just a little bit, but I would browse card 2 when I was using Wi-Fi. Talk about the different ports on the camera. This camera has a bunch of ports over here on the left side, and because it's a weather sealed camera, they're all protected by kind of rubber covers. So they're labeled here. This cover, as you pull it off, the bottom one is a DC input, so you could power the camera from a wall outlet. I don't really know why you would do that if you want to do extended recording, or perhaps you were doing a time lapse that might last many, many hours. You could run out of batteries, even a fully charged battery. So being able to plug it into the wall could help you there. The second from the bottom is an HDMI output, a micro HDMI output. You could use this to hook it up to a TV or potentially a field recorder if you wanted to record video to an external device, but most people will probably never use that. You know what, if you were on vacation, you could hook it up to the TV in your hotel room if you had a micro HDMI to HDMI cable, and gather your family around and do a little slideshow. But most people, honestly, they'd rather just look at the back of the camera. The top port here is a USB 2, a micro USB 2 port. This is useful not for charging, unfortunately, but it's useful for transferring files to your computer if you're not using a memory card reader, or for tethering. Generally, I don't like to use the USB cable. I find it just a pain. I prefer to take the cards out and use a memory card reader. Just Google memory card reader, you can find one. It tends to be faster since you get a micro USB 3 memory card reader. Up here we have two ports for video use. The mic port on the right, that's where you'd hook a microphone, and the headphone jack on the left here, that's where you would put your headphones in so you could listen to the sound and make sure like the wind wasn't getting in the mic, something like that. This camera does have an on-camera mic, but you'll definitely get better results if you plug in an external mic, especially a lav mic like the one I'm wearing here. This is a Sennheiser EW100 G3. Some of the buttons and dials on here aren't completely obvious. If you're used to other cameras, you might be used to the kind of autofocus, manual focus switch being on the lens. Here it's on the body, which I find much nicer because it's always in the same place. So AF there is autofocus, MF, manual focus. And there are a few other controls that are a little unique to this camera. This is the mode dial up here. So you can use this to switch between shutter priority and aperture priority. We'll go through all those. But it has a unique locking mechanism here. So you could see that I can just freely grab this and turn it. And this has never been a problem with this camera. It doesn't accidentally get knocked, but on other cameras it's a little bit looser and it will accidentally get locked. If you want to make sure it doesn't accidentally get moved, for example, if you're used to shooting an aperture priority, it might switch to shutter priority and that could mess up your next shot. You can lock it. So there's a switch here. Just pull this over to lock. And now it won't turn on its own. If you want to turn it, you have to push this button in the middle here and then turn it. So if you want that extra protection, it's there, but you're not inconvenienced by it. I like that little design element quite a bit. Another really unique design element is this special settings dial here. You can, we'll cover this in more detail as we go, but you can do things like turn the Wi-Fi on by turning this to Wi-Fi and then adjusting the main dial here, or sometimes the back dial, depending. You can change with a crop or turn on bracketing. We'll cover that as we go. If you switch to movies, you'll pull this switch forward. You can see a little tiny video camera icon there. It's really easily missed. Or you can switch back to stills. And one more physical element that I want to show here, the screen pulls right out and allows you to tilt it around. It also flips up like this so that you can put it down below you and still have a good angle on it. This camera has little LED lights, which are especially helpful when doing night photography. The lights are turned on by pushing the light button here. So I can push that, and first you can see this display up here gets illuminated, but it also illuminates other things, like it's a little bright in here, so you might not be able to see it, but it can illuminate this display, this space in here, and it can illuminate the lens attachment here, and even the memory card slot in here can be illuminated. To turn those on, hit your menu button. And now go to the wrench 2. So you see I'm going to go up here and then scroll to the right until I see page wrench icon, page 2. And now I can go down to illumination settings and scroll to the right. So you see the only one that's turned on by default is this LCD panel, and that's why that's lit up now. If I want those extra lights, I can scroll down here and turn on the backside controls. Scroll to the right to turn that on at 2 levels, dimmer or brighter. The lens mount, which is on or off, and then the card slot connector. So now that all those are turned on, I'll hit menu to go back. And so now, when I hit the illumination, you can see, there we go. You can see the lights here are illuminated. If I open the memory card slot, I'll hit that illumination button again. You can see that you might have to push it after you open the memory card, but you can see little card slot illuminators in there. I can also, if I'm changing lenses at night and I do that, you can see with the lens illumination, that little light comes on. It's kind of useful. Taking a picture, pretty easy. You put your finger on the shutter halfway until it focuses, and then push it all the way to actually take a picture. When you want to review a picture, you can hit the play button on the back here, and it will show you the last picture. Now, that's pretty obvious, but you can also zoom in on the picture by using the back dial here, and then you can pan around the picture to check the details. That's a terribly useful thing to do, and you often want to make sure that you have everything in focus properly. So for important shots, I recommend reviewing them. When you are reviewing a shot, you can see you can zoom back to folders. I will hit the info button here to scroll through the different types of information. So I hit the info button once and it brings up this menu, and then I scroll through standard, detailed information, which shows me just which focusing points were in focus at the time, the histogram display, which shows my histogram down here, the RGB histogram display, and then no information, which just shows me my picture without any distractions. And I tend to like the standard information display. It's got most of what I need, but I will often want to see the histogram, especially for landscape photography. So I'll just hit the play button, info, and then scroll over to histogram. Now, if you're not familiar with the histogram, check my book, Stunning Digital Photography. Chapter 4 of Stunning Digital Photography covers things you need to know, like what a histogram is and how that works. You can change some aspects of reviewing pictures from the menu. So I'll hit the menu button here, and then I'll go over to Camera, page 5, and here you can, the third menu item down is called Instant Review. So if I scroll down to that and then I scroll right, you can see by default it will display the picture you just took for 1 second, and then it will hide it. So this consumes some battery because it has to light up that back display every time you take a picture. If you want to reduce the battery usage, you could set this to off. Or if 1 second is not enough for you to review the picture, you could increase the time to 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or just indefinitely until the camera times out, usually after a minute. I usually turn the display off because I don't mind hitting that play button, but I do want to conserve battery as much as possible because I hate running out of batteries. You can see this gives you some information about what it's going to show you when you're instantly reviewing the picture, what automatically comes up. So if you want the option to delete it or to zoom in, you can do that, or you can just turn on the histogram. I really like to have the histogram and the highlight alert turned on. So now when I take a picture, it automatically reviews it, and you can see it's showing me a histogram there. And the delete option, what it's doing is, I'll have to make it automatically review. It's showing me this little icon that reminds me that the delete button up here deletes the picture. Seems obvious. I don't really need a picture of a trash can reminding me that a picture of a trash can will delete it. We get it. If you do want to delete the picture, it's up here. It's kind of hidden. Select it, select delete, and the picture is deleted. That's pretty much what you need to know about reviewing pictures. Live view displays what the sensor sees in real time on the back of the camera. So most people with a DSLR, they'll hold the camera up to their face and they'll look through the viewfinder. This gives you much better focusing than using the back screen. It's much, much faster. It also lets you see things in real time with absolutely no delay, and it's a much steadier way to hold the camera, because when you hold it out here, the camera can be a little shaky. When you hold it up to your eye, use your face for support. Your center of gravity is a little closer to your body, so everything's just more stable. The viewfinder is generally better. But when you want to hold the camera out or over your head, or you're on a tripod, live view tends to be much easier. To activate live view, there's this LV button in the upper left corner here. So I'll hit that, it comes on. And so now I can see in real time what's going on. Focusing works the same way. I can just push the shutter button halfway and it will focus for me. If you want to change the live view settings, hit the menu button here. Go to camera icon, page 5, and live view, the second option down here. So when I select that, I get a chance to configure what I'm going to see in live view. I can turn on a grid, which kind of helps with things like the rule of thirds composition. If you think having a grid would help you with that, you can turn the electronic level on or off. I really like having that electronic level on. You can show a histogram in live view, something I like, and you can show highlights, what we call blinkies, for parts of the picture that are overexposed. Those are similar to what you'll see when you review pictures, except it happens in real time, which is really useful. So you can see here, the little histogram here is showing how much of the picture is black on the left versus white on the right, or gray stuff in between. And if I were to increase the exposure compensation on the picture, you can see the histogram moves to the right, showing that the image is getting brighter. And then when parts of the picture get overexposed, you can see it starts to blink red. We call those blinkies. It's telling me that that information is going to be lost, that parts of the shot are overexposed. That happens only because I turned that highlight warning feature on. When you're using live view outside, especially in bright sun, it might not always be bright enough for you to easily see. Fortunately, you can change the brightness of the screen. It's really easy to do. On the directional pad, push the down directional pad there. You can see it's got like a little box with the sun in it. Hit that, and then you can scroll to the right to make the screen brighter, Or you know what, if you're shooting a concert and you're holding the camera over your head like that, go ahead and turn the screen down so you don't ruin the show for everybody else. Anyway, I'm glad that they make it so easy to adjust the brightness there. The diopter is really important, whether or not you're a glasses wearer. If you are a glasses wearer, you can basically dial in your glasses prescription into the viewfinder. That way you can hold it right up to your eye and see everything sharp without having to wear your glasses, because wearing glasses and holding a camera up to your eye kind of sucks. Hold the camera up to your eye to adjust it. Take your glasses off, hold it up to your eye, and then with the camera on, look at the letters at the bottom. Don't look through the lens, but look at the numbers that show you the shutter speed and aperture, and then dial this little diopter up or down until it's as sharp as possible. It's like when you go to the optometrist and they're like, better here or better here. Just keep going up and down until everything is great. For those of you who aren't wearing glasses, you need to pay attention to this. If those numbers at the bottom ever seem unsharp, or you feel like the camera isn't getting things in focus, it's probably that this stupid diopter got accidentally hit. I don't know why they put it in a place where it can accidentally get hit, but that happens all my cameras all the time. It'll get bumped just in day-to-day shooting, and then the next time I go to use it, everything's blurry. So you really have to know where the diopter is just to keep putting it back after it gets messed up. I get so many questions about that. The camera has lots of different shooting modes that allow you to separately control different aspects of the exposure. We'll talk about the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. If you want to control the aperture, you can put the camera into Aperture Priority mode, which on the mode dial here is labeled AV, Aperture Value. Now, in AV mode, you can adjust the aperture by using the back dial here. This is your main dial. You can see it's graphically displayed when you have this information display up. You can see this little icon here represents this back dial, and F8 is your current aperture. If, when I say things like aperture and f-stop, if that makes no sense to you, go here and watch this video at sdp.io/f-stop. I describe the whole thing. Or read chapter 4 of my book, Stunning Digital Photography, which also has useful videos in it. Here's a quick example. Aperture controls the size of the opening in the lens. It works just like the iris of your eye. In bright light, it can get really small to let less light in, or in dim light, it can open up wide to let lots of light in and get that beautiful background blur that you're familiar with. So you're controlling both the light and the background blur, and then some aspects of like the sharpness of the lens too. Small f-stop numbers like f2 make a big opening, and high f-stop numbers like f32 make a small opening. Here's an example of how it changes the background blur. These were shot with an 85mm lens on a camera just like this K-1. At 85mm and f1.8, you would need a fast prime lens for this. You can see the picture on the left there, the background is completely blurry. You cannot tell really what's going on. You get a sense for the environment. You can see there are some street lights back there. Maybe she's in an alley, but you can't tell the details of everything. The background is blurred. At f8, there's less background blur. Things start to come into detail. You have a bigger sense for the setting of the picture. And then at f22, a high f-stop number, the buildings in the background are crisp, the cars are crisp. These are the types of decisions that having a camera that allows you to manually control the settings, that it allows you to make. You can't do that with your smartphone, and it's really nice that you can put it into Aperture Priority and just flip that dial. Shutter Priority controls this amount of time that the shutter of the camera is open. Now, it seems like when you take a picture that it all happens in an instant, but it's not really an instant. The shutter is always open for a period of time, a very precise period of time, and things happen in that instant. Even a typical shutter speed might be 1/60th of a second, but if a person is running and you photograph them at 1/60th of a second, they're gonna end up very blurry. You might even be shaking the camera so much that a picture at 1/60th of a second would turn out shaky because of your hands. So understanding the shutter speed that you're using can be really important. If you want to control the shutter speed and let the camera set the aperture for you automatically, set the camera to shutter priority, which is called TV on this camera. It's like time value. Shutter controls the time that the shutter is open. And if you want to know more about configuring all your settings, I have a full video here, sdp.io/settings. That's free too. It'll really help you out. This is just an example of how changing the shutter speed can vary the outcome of your pictures. I'm on one of those spinny things in the playground with my daughter, 5 here, but at 1/8 of a second, you can see the background is completely blurred. At 1/30th, you can see, you see more of the shape. You can see that things start to get a little bit sharper. And then at 1/125th, the background is now completely sharp. We're both spinning, which is why she's sharp in all the pictures, because she's moving with me. Anyway, these types of effects you can create when you understand how to control the shutter. And that's why learning how to use those things besides just changing the shutter is important. So once you have it in shutter priority, if you want to change the shutter speed, you can see the back display here tells me that the front dial will control the shutter speed. So this is the front dial here. So I'll just move that to go down to, say, 1/30th of a second, which is good for typical casual shooting without a lot of motion. I could jump up to 1/250th of a second, which is good for like little kid sports, like, 10 and under. That's good at 1/250th. If you get into the bigger kids, like high school kids, middle school kids, 1/500th is probably better. Once you get into like pro athletes, you might be at 1/1000th or 1/2000th of a second. Flying birds like osprey, I'll shoot at 1/2000th of a second. Things like hummingbirds, I might go all the way up to 1/8000th of a second. The camera can go to really slow shutter speeds too, like 0.5 seconds here is half a second, and that would be great for shooting at night. You can get great pictures at night, really clean images. You probably want to put it on a tripod. Or you can keep scrolling all the way to 30 seconds, which is great for taking pictures of stars and not having a lot of noise in the sky. You can get really good images that way. If you want to control both the shutter speed and the aperture at the same time, if you get really advanced, this camera actually has 2 different manual modes. The most obvious one is M here, M on the mode dial, manual mode. The controls are the same as in aperture and shutter priority. The back dial controls your aperture, while the controls your shutter speed, and you can't forget because it actually shows you here. The other manual mode is TAV. In TAV, it works exactly the same, except the camera is automatically setting the ISO. We haven't talked about ISO yet, but ISO controls the sensitivity of the camera sensor, basically. So you can see now it shows auto ISO, and if I choose a high f-stop number, you can see that ISO is going higher and higher. That means the sensor is getting more and more sensitive to light, meaning my exposure will actually stay the same. So you can see, if you look down here, an f-stop number, and you can see that the display isn't getting any brighter or darker. It's actually staying the same. And that's because the camera is changing the ISO as I'm changing the f-stop number. Same thing happens when I change the shutter speed. The camera's being really smart about it and keeping a nice rock-solid exposure for me. The difference between TAV and M, TAV is auto ISO. In manual mode here, I'll turn off live view. You can see the ISO is not changing as I adjust the settings. I would need to push the ISO button here and then adjust the ISO manually. So M is full manual, meaning you control the ISO. TAV, manual mode, but with auto ISO. And if you are interested in using manual mode, it's not nearly as hard as it sounds, I promise. Watch the video at sdp.io/go manual. I walk you through the process of finding the right settings step by step. Make it as easy as possible. I'll take a quick break and plug some books that I have. I wrote the #1 book on photography in the world, Stunning Digital Photography. Has over 14 hours of video now, and you can get the ebook version for $10, or the paperback version is around $20. Check Amazon or go to this link, sdp.io/store. More people learn it to use it to learn photography than anything else, and we've helped just a lot of people. Even if you don't like books, it's packed with videos, quizzes, and an online community that will give you feedback on your pictures and answer questions for you. They're just a really helpful group, and it's not much of a gamble. And if you're not happy with it, I'll give you back your money, no problem. If you get into editing your pictures, organizing your pictures, because you'll probably take a lot of pictures, Adobe Lightroom is really helpful for that. It's a photo editing software. I have an entire book that will help get you started. Same price point here. And if you get into serious editing, Photoshop, I have a book on that too. If you have questions about lenses, flashes, tripods, studio lights, monopods, lighting modifiers, computers, camera bags, just about anything gear related, I have a whole book with tons and tons of video dedicated to it. Go to sdp.io/store to check any of those out, or just search on Amazon. And if you just want beginning photography videos, I have a series on that too. Again, check that link out. We'll resume your lesson now. Night photography is one of the most fun things that you can do because night photography uses really slow shutter speeds. You're always using a tripod. Anyway, it forces you to slow down because you'll often be taking pictures that take 20 to 30 seconds. For a quick overview of night photography, go to sdp.io/np. That's just free, just pointing you to that video. If you want to learn a little bit about the basics of landscape photography, the techniques that'll help you more than just knowing the camera settings, go to sdp.io/ls. If you want to learn more about wildlife, sdp.io/wl. Now let's go over how to use bulb mode. Bulb mode allows you to keep the shutter open for longer than 30 seconds or for some arbitrary time. So 30 seconds is enough typically to take pictures of stars, but sometimes you might want to actually take pictures of star trails where the stars move. You can do that in bulb mode. Put the camera into B here. And now the default setting for bulb mode is my favorite setting. Push the shutter button once to open the shutter. And now start a timer that will remind you in 2 minutes or 5 minutes or however long you want to keep the shutter open. When that timer is off, you can go back and just push the shutter again to stop it. It's the easiest bulb mode that I've seen on a camera, so thanks Pentax for building that in. Now let's talk about the different shutter modes. By default, when you pick up the camera and you hold the shutter button down, it takes one picture. Well, now I have it in bulb. It'll take one picture. And even if you hold the button down, it won't take multiple pictures. I prefer to have it in continuous mode. To activate continuous mode, push up on the directional pad here. And then you can scroll over to H, continuous H. And you see there are continuous shooting modes, medium speed and low speed. Continuous shooting high isn't too fast. It's 4.5 frames a second. So now when I hold the shutter button down, it'll take multiple pictures. And that's really useful even for photographing still subjects, because if you take 3 pictures, often you'll find that one of those 3 pictures is better than the other 2. The more subjects are moving, the more likely that is to be true. So if you're taking a family picture and there are 5 people in the picture, on that first picture, one of those people is bound to have a strange expression on, or they'll be blinking or something. But by the time you take that second frame, everybody's face might be lined up, or maybe it'll be the third frame. Sometimes just from pushing the shutter button down, you'll shake the camera a little bit, so the first picture might be shaky, but the second picture will be clear. Anyway, for any important picture, I tend to take a couple of shots. And continuous shooting like that makes my life much easier. If you've reconfigured the directional pad here to control the focusing points, you can always switch on live view and then push up here, and that will allow you to change it even when you have reconfigured those buttons, and I'll talk about changing the layout of the buttons. You can also switch between different continuous modes by moving the special dial here over to CHCL and then adjusting the back dial. You can see on the information display here, it's continuous high, continuous medium, and then continuous low. So it's just a quick way to switch back to continuous shooting. If you're in single shooting or something else, switching over here and doing that, we'll do that. So it's 2 different ways to accomplish the same thing. This also allows you to, the same menu, pushing up on the directional pad here, also allows you to turn on the self timer for 2 seconds or 12 seconds. The 2-second timer is great when you're working on a tripod and you want to get the sharpest picture possible, because by waiting 2 seconds, it'll eliminate that camera shake that's induced by pushing the shutter button. So I'll set it to that, and then when I push the button, oh, you can see the lights blinking here. It does that for 2 seconds and then it fires. The 10-second is more useful, 10-second delay is more useful for those times when you start the camera and then you run and put your arm around your family for the group selfie. But a better way to do it is to choose this third option here, self-timer plus continuous. And you can see by default, it will take 3 pictures after waiting for a certain delay. So if you want to adjust the parameters, hit the info button here. And now you can see you can change the shooting speed from continuous high, medium, or low. So you could actually slow down the shots. And then you might say, make it take 5 shots. This would be the best for the group portrait. So as we click OK to save that now, and now I'll fire it up. See, now it's counting down. Now's when you're running around to put your arm around your family. And eventually the timer is going to expire and it's going to take those 5 shots at a slow pace for me. Speeds up at the end. 3, 4, 5. So by taking several shots, your family will kind of hear the shutter clicking and they'll kind of know to keep their expression going. And then back in Lightroom, probably, you can go through the pictures and pick the very best one, and one of them will be better than the others. There are a few other shutter modes that are worth mentioning. This is for a remote control, but honestly, I don't ever find a remote control is necessary on this camera at all because it's got things like the interval timer built in. You can also turn on bracketing here. Bracketing allows you to take multiple shots at different exposures. So you can see I'm moving the rear dial here, and if you look closely here, you can see it shows -2, 0, and +2. So it's going to take 3 shots at, one shot is underexposed, one is properly exposed, and one is overexposed. In film days, we used this to make sure that we had one that was properly exposed because we didn't get to see it in real time. Nowadays, it's more likely used for HDR processing when there's really bright skies and really deep shadows in a picture and you want to blend them together later. Bracketing and shooting raw is the best way to do that, and it's really easy to turn on that way. You can also take 5 shots or just 2 shots by moving the front dial here, but it's showing you that here. It's really easy to use. Great controls on this camera. So as I set that to bracketing with 3 shots, when I fire the shutter now, you can see it took 3 shots in succession. And if I review those pictures, there's the properly exposed shot, the underexposed shot, and the overexposed shot. When I'm done, I'll probably want to go back and just shut that off. Set it back to continuous. Another way to quickly turn bracketing on and off is to use this special dial here and turn it over to BKT. When you have it in BKT, now you can turn this back dial here. So you can see as I adjust that back dial, it's going to turn bracketing on for me. Now, I can't figure out a way to turn bracketing off completely once I turn it on with this dial. So to turn it off, the only way I figured out is to go here and go back and select continuous shooting again. I guess one option would be if you turn bracketing on with the mode dial here, you could select continuous high, continuous low, and then adjust it until you're back on continuous high. Now bracketing is turned off. So that's how you would do it. One final setting on that button is the interval timer. Hit that button up here and scroll all the way to the right, and this allows you to activate the interval timer. This is good for making a time-lapse video or just taking a whole bunch of pictures in a row. By default, you can see it's set up to take 2 pictures in 2-second intervals. That's not that useful. Hit the info button here, and you can change the interval between pictures. For example, you could do, well, 2 seconds seems to be the minimum, but you could do once every 5 seconds, and you could set it to configure to do it 1,002 times. And then you can configure how it's triggered, either with, for example, a 2-second delay, which is a good idea to make sure that first shot is nice and steady and doesn't have camera shake. So I'll set it up to do that type of interval. And now when I go to take the picture, it will wait 2 seconds. And then it takes the first picture. And now it's going to wait 5 seconds and it will take another picture. Continue to take another picture every 5 seconds. Perfect for stitching together a time lapse. If you want to interrupt it early, just turn the camera off. Time lapses will burn through your batteries, so you might want to turn off the automatic reviewing of pictures so the display doesn't show it. Still, you should have an extra battery around or go ahead and plug in. You can change the camera's focusing mode to either track moving subjects or focus on a still subject and then stop tracking. It's really easy to do. You'll hit the AF mode button over here and just kind of hold that down with maybe your left thumb. So you'll hold that down, and when you do that, you can see the display back here tells you that the front dial switches between AFS and AFC. AFS, still subjects. AFC, continuous focusing for moving subjects. And while you're there, you can choose between different focusing points. So by moving the back dial here, while I'm holding down that button, this mode automatically has the camera select a focusing point. That's a terrible choice because the camera, it's going to be right like 75% of the time, but then 25% of the time, it's going to be focusing on some random thing in the background, and that gets really frustrating. So you can narrow it down to a smaller group of focusing points, or do what I suggest and pick a single focusing point. Once you have that single focusing point selected, you can use the directional pad to pick where you want to focus. So in portraits, you always want to focus on the nearest eye. Same is true for any kind of wildlife picture. If you want to automatically jump back to the middle, hold down that focusing button and then push the OK button there. Oh, you don't need to hold it down. You just push it once and release it. And once you've selected a single focusing point, these buttons have a different behavior. Now, instead of changing the continuous mode, shooting mode, they will change your focusing point. If at some point you want to actually control those, for one, you can use the continuous settings up here, or you can turn on live view, and then this will revert to the older setting because in live view, you don't need to move focusing points around in the same way. So it works a little bit different. For information on why you want to switch between like single or continuous focusing and why you might want to select individual focusing points, watch the free video at sdp.io/focus. I mentioned this already, but if you want to manually focus your lens rather than autofocus it, you can pretty much autofocus at any point, especially if you're using back button focus, which I'll discuss in a bit. Or you can always switch this switch on the front from AF to MF. Just be sure to switch it back when you're done, because otherwise you might grab the camera for a quick shot and find that the camera is not autofocusing as you expect. I discussed ISO a little bit earlier. ISO controls the sensor, the sensitivity of the sensor. There's an ISO button here. So you can just hold that down and then move the back dial here to change the ISO. This is only going to be, well, it's relevant in shutter priority and aperture priority and manual mode. For me, most of the time, I just use auto ISO. So I can turn on auto ISO by hitting the green button. You can see it's showing the green button, ISO auto. So I'll hit that, and now auto ISO is on. So it's a weird kind of counterintuitive combination to turn on auto ISO. Just do that and then push that button. Or do that and switch to a manual setting if you want to turn off auto ISO. You can also use this dial to quickly change ISO. So if you are always adjusting your ISO and you really want a third dial, switch this to ISO. And now you can see I can manually change it from here. If I want to switch to auto ISO, I still have to hit the ISO button and push that green button. But then at any point, I will switch away from auto ISO if I move that. I have a whole video describing the ins and outs of ISO. If you don't yet fully understand it, visit sdp.io/ISO to watch it free. If you are using any automatic setting, if you're in anything except full manual mode with manual ISO, exposure compensation will control how bright or dark a picture is. So sometimes you take a picture and it's just too dark. Maybe there's a bright sky behind your subject, or you're shooting in snow, and you'll find that the whole picture will just be too dark. Exposure compensation allows you to kind of outthink the camera when the camera's automatic settings don't work for you. To control the exposure compensation, you can push this plus or minus button here next to the shutter button. Hold that down and then move the back dial. You can see as I scroll to the right here, everything is going to get brighter, and if I scroll to the left, everything gets darker. So let's demonstrate this with live view. I'll turn live view on here. First, I'll take a picture of the screen. And you can see that's a reasonably well exposed picture looking at the histogram here, but it could be a little bit brighter. So for this, because it's a white subject, I might want to crank up the exposure compensation. I will hold down that exposure compensation button and then scroll this back dial. And let's make it 2 stops brighter. You can see in live view it's getting brighter because it's showing that parts of the picture are now overexposed because they're blinking red. So that's the overexposed picture, and this is the original exposure. So you can see that by holding this exposure compensation button down and then adjusting the dial in the back, I can make everything much brighter or much, much darker. And so you can get artistic with this. I would suggest that you watch the histogram here and make sure that there's something in the right quarter of the histogram. If there's nothing in the right quarter, then the picture's probably underexposed and you probably want to raise the exposure compensation. But if your histogram looks like this, with stuff crammed into the right side or stuff blinking over here, that means it's overexposed and you want to push it down to the left. For detailed information about how exposure compensation works and when to use it, visit stp.io/EC. That's just another free video. The risk of exposure compensation is that you'll turn it on for one picture and then later you'll pick up your camera and you'll take another picture and it'll still be on, and so you'll end up unknowingly overexposing or underexposing your photo. So there's a setting in here that will make it automatically forget the exposure compensation after the camera shuts off. So let's say I turn the exposure compensation up 3 stops. I'll go to the camera menu here, go to page 5, and go to memory. And when I select memory, you can see I can select all the different things that it will remember. And by default, it will remember all these things. But I'm going to turn off EV compensation. I really like this. And while I'm at it, I'm going to turn off flash exposure compensation because I want both of those to reset automatically. And I'll hit menu to back out. So now you can see exposure compensation is still up because the camera has stayed on. So in a given session, it should be okay. But if you shut the camera off and turn it back on, now you can see the exposure compensation is back to 0. I really love that setting. That's not something you can really get on Canon and Nikon cameras, so I consider that to be a huge advantage. Now let's talk about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a great way to get your pictures from your camera onto your phone, and then you can get them from your phone onto Instagram or Twitter. And when you're out traveling and you don't have time to unload your pictures, I find it just terribly useful. It lets people see the pictures much, much faster. The easiest way to, well, you can turn on Wi-Fi by hitting the menu button here and then scrolling over to the wrench icon, page 2, and then scrolling down to Wi-Fi and turning this on. That's how you do it. I find a much easier way is to take this special dial here and go to Wi-Fi and then turn the back dial. And you can see that turns it on. It also lights this blue indicator light. Now, this does not connect to your Wi-Fi network. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It creates its own access point. So now that Wi-Fi is turned on here, it's radiating out Wi-Fi stuff. I need to take my phone, Android or iPhone, and or iOS, could be an iPad or whatever, and I'm going to install the Pentax image sync app. It's that icon there. And then I need to connect to that Wi-Fi network. So as my phone refreshes here, I'll see the Wi-Fi network. There it is. So it's named Pentax _ something. I'll select that and connect to it. Now, the first time you connect, it might prompt you for a password because it's a secured network. You can see that password by hitting the menu button, and you need to go back to the wrench icon here, going to the Wi-Fi, and then communication info. So here you'll see the password. So the first time you connect, you'll have to punch that password in, and then you'll get connected. But your phone should remember the password after that. So now Wi-Fi is on here. My phone is connected to the Wi-Fi and authenticated with the password. I can fire up the image sync app. So at the bottom here is kind of the mode selector, and the play button plays back any pictures that you have stored on the camera. This is the mode that you'll use most of the time for transferring pictures over. So now you can see I can kind of scroll through and see all the different pictures on the camera. Here are some pictures that I took of Justin earlier. So I can tap it to view it, and then I can kind of zoom in and pan around. Now, there's some weird things, and I'm just going to show you them so you don't freak out, but with this version at least, I can't turn it sideways. It only works in vertical mode. I'll go back here. If I want to transfer one of these to my phone, what I'll do is I'll hold my finger down on it, and that pops up. And now I'll hit this icon to the right here, which shows the camera with radiation. Notice there is a Facebook icon here, and it can post pictures to Facebook, but I don't like to do it through that because it doesn't give you the chance to like tag people and stuff. It's not a great interface. So I always just transfer it to my phone, and now you can see it's spinning around, showing that one picture is transferring. It does not scale the pictures down when it sends them to your phone. It always transfers the full file. So it can take a while because it's a 36 megapixel file. Earlier I mentioned when you want to use Wi-Fi, you should use the two cards, have the RAW file record to card 1 and the JPEG file record to card 2. You can see up here, it takes so long they have to keep waking your phone up. You can see up here that I'm reading from card 2, the card with the JPEG files. If you try to transfer the RAW files, the DNG files, you can transfer them, but they'll take a really long time and then your phone can't look at them. So that transfer finally finished up. So now I'll switch modes to view the pictures that have been transferred to the phone. So you can see that the picture has been transferred over. I cannot share it directly from here. It's weird. Instead, what I need to do is to open up whatever app I want to use, like Instagram. And when I go to share a picture from my gallery here, you'll see the pictures in your gallery. So it's in your main photo gallery is where it saves it, but it's too bad the app doesn't let you share directly from it. So going back to the image sync app, there is another mode here for selecting pictures. If you want to transfer multiple pictures at a time, select this little checkbox mode there. And so now I can select, as many pictures as I want and then actually begin transferring them. It's a weird interface. So now I have 4 pictures selected. I need to hold my finger down on one of them and then click the transfer to camera icon. And now it's going to transfer all 4 of them. This is why I wanted to show it to you, because it's not most iPhone apps you can just kind of figure out on your own. And because I'm transferring 4 pictures, it could take a really long time. If I scroll over here, I can remotely control the camera. So that's pretty useful. If you switch to this mode here at the bottom, live view pops up, at least it should. And now you can kind of use a touch screen to change the focusing points. You can also adjust the settings like the shutter speed and aperture. I have it in auto mode now, but let's switch it over to manual mode. You can see the mode up here that I've selected. So now I can adjust the exposure compensation. I can change the aperture, these kind of droplets. I can change the shutter speed, and then I can take the picture by hitting that. Change. You're locked into single shooting. You can't take continuous pictures for some reason. I don't know why. So there you go. The app is not, the user interface is not what you might expect from a modern smartphone app, but it does work. And it's certainly better than the competition has. Now I'll talk a little bit about shooting RAW versus JPEG. By default, the camera's set up to take JPEG pictures, and JPEG pictures it's the file format that you would use to share pictures on the internet. It's a compressed file format, so pictures are nice and small and easily shareable. But JPEG pictures throw out a huge amount of information, especially information collected in the deep shadows or the bright highlights. So if you take a RAW picture, it stores all of that information that the camera can see into this, what's called a DNG file, a digital negative file. You can then process that in an application like Adobe Lightroom to recover those shadows and highlights in post. So basically, if you screw up, if you overexpose or underexpose your picture, you can fix it in post with basically no penalty. It also allows you to make a high dynamic range picture with a single frame. So you can see the details in faces that were otherwise lost in shadow without making the sky overexposed. So you can actually get a better exposure than would otherwise be possible. I'll show you how to quickly, if you're interested in the differences, visit stp.io/rawvjpeg. But in the meantime, I'll just show you how to change it. Go to the camera icon, page 2, and first memory card options. So if you're recording to more than one memory card, this records the same to both, and this records RAW plus JPEG. So because I have RAW plus JPEG set, RAW to one card and JPEG to the other, I can't select it. It's always going to be RAW to one and JPEG to the other. But if I recorded just one card or I record the same to both cards, now I need to go down to image capture settings and change it from JPEG to RAW. If you want both a RAW and a JPEG file, you can select RAW plus, but generally RAW is just fine for me. If you're upgrading from a Pentax APS-C camera like a KS2 or a K3, you can still put those APS-C lenses on your Pentax body. By default, your K-1 is going to crop the original 36 megapixel image down to 18 megapixels. It's going to discard everything that's wider than the smaller APS-C sensor. That's because if you put an APS-C lens on here, you might see a circle with dark edges in the center because the lens wasn't designed to cover the entire sensor. But depending on the lens, it can be okay, or you might be able to get away with a wider crop. If you want to capture the full frame image, and this is something that I would normally prefer to do, go to the camera page 2 in the menu and select the crop item here. And instead of auto, select full frame. Now it'll capture the full frame, and you might have to go back and crop later to get rid of those dark edges, but at least you have that option. If it's on auto, the camera's always going to be cropping it for you. This camera has an awesome feature called PixelShift. First, it has a sensor that can move around inside the camera. When you turn on PixelShift, when you take a picture, it will actually take 4 pictures. After the first picture, it will move the sensor 1 pixel and take another picture, and then move it another pixel and take another picture, and move it another pixel and take another picture. It then stacks those together, giving it a perfect view of the entire red, blue, green spectrum for each individual pixel, making much sharper pictures. And in the real world, this works, with a couple caveats. You have to have the camera on a tripod. You can't hand hold it. And the more motion you have in the image, the more weird artifacts that you might see. It has a technique for handling some movement in the photo, but the method it uses to remove that movement isn't always perfect, but it still works well, and I do recommend using it. So put it on a tripod and turn this on. The easiest way to turn it on in general is to hit the info button, and then on the second row, the last item here, this is pixel shift resolution. You can see it's off right now. So I'll twist the back dial here until I have motion correction on. That's my preferred pixel shift mode. So I'll select that, and now when I go to take a picture, let's put this back in automatic mode so it's not overexposed. When I go to take the picture, you can see it's taking 4 pictures, and then it's going to blend those images together and save them as one big, like 140 megabyte raw file. You can process those raw files in Adobe Lightroom. However, Lightroom does not currently handle the motion correction part of it. If you want to correct for the motion, you're better off using an app that's included with this. Check the apps that are included in the software with that camera. That app will work a lot better for you. As another feature that's enabled by the fact that the sensor kind of freely floats is horizon correction. I love this because even on a tripod, I don't think I've ever taken a picture with a level horizon because, you're always off a little bit. But then when your horizon is tilted just a little bit, you end up having to rotate it in post, and that means cropping off the corners. So horizon correction will fix your horizon automatically even when you're hand holding it, and it means your pictures will just be level. It's brilliant. Hit the menu button and then go to camera page 4. And you can see horizon correction, automatic horizon correction is the 3rd item down. Turn that on. It's great. It works. Astro Tracer is another cool feature. Camera page 3, the last item here, Astro Tracer, written in all caps, so I guess I should pronounce it Astro Tracer. I don't know why they yell it. Astro Tracer rotates the sensor to match the relative movement of the stars in the sky when you take pictures of the stars. So if you haven't done star photography before, you might not even be aware of this, but the stars are constantly moving through the sky. And when you take a picture of it with a normal camera and you take like a 5-minute exposure, those stars will just become long lines. We call them star trails. You can Google that. I have a video on it. If you don't want star trails, you can use Astro Tracer to allow you to take a much longer exposure. And because of the long exposure with Astro Tracer, you're going to get a cleaner image because images of the stars tend to be really, really noisy because it's hard for the camera to gather enough light to get a really clean dark sky. So you get better pictures of stars because the sensor is moving. Now, terrestrial objects like trees and buildings that you might include in the foreground of your picture, they're not moving with the stars. So Astro Tracer will actually cause them to move. So you wouldn't want to use Astro Tracer if you were putting together a landscape photo that included both stars and terrestrial subjects. But if you're taking a picture just of stars, Astro Tracer is absolutely perfect. So I turned it on. You can also go down to precise calibration here, which walks you through the process of getting the GPS and other sensors in the camera all perfectly calibrated to make sure that everything is aligned perfectly. You should do that once you're actually at the location. So I'll cancel the calibration now. I want to show you the AA filter simulator. AA is the anti-aliasing filter, and older cameras, well, and many modern Canon cameras have an AA filter that reduces moire, which is a weird pattern that appears when you take pictures of fabrics. It's almost never a problem. However, if you are doing like a fashion shoot, or you're taking a picture of somebody in checkered shirts, or with a really obvious texture to the fabric, you might start to see that moire. And if you want to get rid of it, you can turn on the AA filter simulator, which literally just blurs the picture a little bit by shaking the sensor. To turn on the AA filter simulator, hit the menu button and then go to the camera page 4. It's the first option here. If this is disabled, then it might be because you have the PixelShift feature turned on. You can turn that off. You have a couple of options here, type 1 or type 2, or a bracketing option that will go through the different options. Type 1 is for finer textures, and type 2 is for looser textures. So you might even just want to experiment with them. Presumably it's some sort of fashion shoot. You can take a picture of the fabric at the right working distance, at the right zoom level, and determine which of those options looks best, if indeed either of them look better than having it off. When you are done with that, you want to be sure to turn it off, because it will reduce the sharpness of all of your images. For the metering modes, I typically recommend you just leave the metering in the default mode and then use exposure compensation as I described. If you do want to think for yourself here and take control of the metering mode, there is, I think the easiest way to do this is to hit the metering button up here. It shares with the trash can button. So I'll push that and hold it down, and then I can change the metering mode by changing the back button here. So you have 3 options. The green there in the middle, I don't have enough fingers. The green is the default, and that's the intelligent metering, where it will look at the foreground and the background and pick the right exposure for you. This option is the center weighted metering, where it looks at the middle of the picture and meters off of that. And then the third option with the little dot is spot metering, where it looks at a very small portion of the frame in the middle of the frame. Really only old film photographers would want to use spot metering. It's not terribly useful for most things. That's it for metering modes. If you want to configure the flash, it doesn't have a built-in flash, but you can add a flash up here. You can basically choose between a red eye reduction feature and flash exposure compensation. I just want to show you where those are. Camera page 1, go down to the next to last option, flash mode, scroll to the right. You can turn on red eye reduction, which will just flash a little bit before it takes the picture, pre-flash. That will, your subjects will see the bright light and their eyes will constrict a little bit, so it helps to reduce red eye. Or you can brighten or lower the output from the flash by using flash exposure compensation here. Chapter 3 of Stunning Digital Photography tells you everything you need to know about flash for the most part, including using flash exposure compensation. White balance is covered in Chapter 3 of Stunning Digital Photography also, but basically your eye sees things as white regardless of the types of lights that you're under. So I'm under LED lights now, everything looks white to me. If I go outside and I look at this table, it'll still look white. If I look at it under incandescent lights, it will still look white. But in reality, those things are all 3 different colors. These LED lights are a little bit blue, the sun is much warmer, and those incandescent lights end up being a little bit yellow, a little bit green. They're all different colors, but your brain looks at the light in the room and adjusts what the colors that you see. So it actually lies to you a little bit. It doesn't show you the truth because your brain has an auto white balance feature. This camera also has an auto white balance feature, and I just use that all the time. But I also shoot RAW. And because I shoot RAW, it's easy for me to change the white balance in post. If you want to set a custom white balance, you can see that the right button on the directional pad here is labeled WB for white balance. So the easiest thing to do is to turn on live view here, hit the white balance, And then choose the white balance that you want, that describes it. So you have settings for a cloudy day, or you can be in the shade, or daylight. You can see fluorescent lights, incandescent lights. You can also manually white balance off of a white card. To set it off of a white card, select this option, and then just point your camera at something. You'll look through the viewfinder, something that's white in the right light, and then take a picture. And now you can scroll around and kind of pick the part of the picture that's supposed to be white, and then select OK. And now the camera uses it to adjust the white balance. So you can see this table is perfectly white. Could be gray, doesn't matter as long as it's not a color. And if you want to check what a different part of the scene looks like using live view, you'll twist this dial to the right there. And it will take a new picture and show you what that looks like. You can also manually adjust the white balance up or down by hitting the info button here. And now I can manually adjust the color balance from blue to amber or from green to magenta. So we can really dial it in perfectly and manually. But again, you can save yourself a lot of time by just moving this to post, taking one picture of the white card if you really want to be precise about it, and shooting raw. But some people like to get it right in camera. For me, I find it easier to do it on the computer. You can record video with this. It's HD and 30 frames a second. For the most part, the default options are just fine. The one thing you might want to change is if you're using an external recorder, you want to manually set the volume levels rather than leave them at auto. If you leave the volume levels at auto with an external mic, in the quiet moments, you'll find that the camera will ramp up the volume, so you'll just hear a lot of noise when things get quiet, and it can make the editing really difficult. Hit the menu button, go to the video camera page 1 here, and then go down to sound volume setting. And now instead of auto, you would set this to manual, and then adjust the volume level until you don't see peaking. You kind of want, at the loudest levels, you want some volume in the yellows. And so this setting is pretty much perfect for the way we're recording right now. For general shooting, if you're just recording your kid's concert or stuff casually, the auto is fine as long as you're using the on-camera mic. If you see references to using mirror lockup, for example, in stunning digital photography, I would just turn on live view. Live view basically locks the mirror up, because the mirror has to be up for the sensor to be able to show you this display. Mirror lockup is just a technique for reducing the camera shake. So this moves the mirror up, satisfying that requirement. The only other requirement is that you have a delayed shutter. So what I'll do is I'll go down and select the 2-second interval timer that we specified earlier. So now this kind of simulates mirror lockup in kind of an easier fashion. When I take a picture, you'll always be on a tripod when you do this, by the way. It will delay it by 2 seconds, and there'll be basically no camera shake whatsoever caused by either the shutter or the mirror moving. This camera has a GPS built into it, the global positioning system, the same thing that your car and your phone use to figure out where in the world you are. So the camera knows where in the world you are. The feature is not turned on by default, though, because it does drain the battery some. If you use GPS, it's awesome, because it will tag each of your pictures with the location. Then when you load the pictures in Adobe Lightroom, you can go to the Maps tab and look at a big map that shows you where you took all your pictures. I think it's absolutely an amazing feature that most cameras don't have, so I'm so glad it has it. Hit the menu button, go to the wrench icon page 2, and then go down to GPS eCompass. Scroll to the right and turn GPS logging on. Start it. So now it's logging, and you can see the logging interval here is 15 seconds by default, and it's logging to the memory card. Now it will be tagging. You can also use the actual log file, but for the most part, you can just import your pictures right into Lightroom and see the GPS log. When you're not traveling around, if you're just shooting at home or you don't care about the location, you can turn it off. But if you are staying on top of your batteries, if you're not having a problem with the batteries, it will record indefinitely. Well, it will record for 1 hour for you. So you kind of would need to go in and manually turn it off. Before you start logging, you can set this to a higher amount, but you can't set it to be on all the time. So the most you can do is set it to record for 24 hours straight. You can also change the logging interval A 5-second interval means it will update your location every 5 seconds. You'd only care about that if you're moving really fast, right? It'll use more batteries if you do that. If you're moving slowly and you don't care, as long as you're within 1 minute of your previous location, then you could set it to a higher interval here and save your battery time. But 15 seconds is going to be fine, and it's not going to eat your batteries too fast. Let's talk about how to format a memory card. Your memory cards are your digital film, and you can use them many, many times. You will fill them up, especially with these 140 megabyte PixelShift files. When you've offloaded the pictures to your computer and back those up so you don't lose them, you can format the memory card to reuse it. So hit the menu button here and get up to the wrench icon, page 3, and then select Format. Scroll to the right, and now you pick between card 1 and card 2, and it will confirm that you want to format it. It'll erase all your pictures at this point. If you accidentally erase your pictures and you want them back, there's a very cool and free tool that will scan the memory card, find those image files, and give them back to you, including raw files. You can find it at sdp.io/photorec. If you search for a solution, you're going to get prompted by 50 different tools that will want you to, where they want you to buy it just to do this. Most of those tools just use this free tool on the back end. So just get the free tool directly. Button customization is one of my favorite aspects of the Pentax, because you can customize any of the buttons. You can change what the front and back dials do. You can make it exactly the way you want it to be. Hit the menu button, and go to the camera page 5. Now go down to the 5th option here, button customization, and scroll to the right. Now you can control each of these different buttons and how they work. The FX1 button is right here. That's FX1. And for me, I have that set to PixelShift resolution, because I'm always turning PixelShift on and off. So now when I have that, I can push that, and you can see up here, it turns PixelShift on for me. Just saves me a moment. Let's go back there. FX2, you can customize. It is this bottom button here. And by default, it changes the screen brightness. I actually like that, but you could customize it to do something different. The AF button, the reason you'd want to adjust that is if you want to enable back button focus, which is a terribly useful technique, especially for people who might do night photography or people shooting a mix of both still and moving subjects. It's great for portraiture. If you're curious about what back button focus is, I'm not going to describe it all here. Go to sdp.io/YBB, and I have a whole video showing you what it is, but now I'll show you how to do it. Under button customization, select AF button, scroll to the right, and by default it's set to AF1. What you want is AF2. With AF2, pushing the shutter button down halfway will meter the scene and turn the camera on, but it will not autofocus it. When you want to autofocus, you'll hit this back AF button here. That's why it's called back button. So with that, I have back button enabled. It's a great, great feature. You can also change the preview dial, which is what happens when you pull this all the way to the right there. That's the preview. And then the E-dial programming allows you to configure what the front and back dials do in every different mode. P mode, SV mode, TV mode, shutter priority, and AV mode, which is aperture priority. So if it's confusing to you, if you're a Canon user and you're used to the front dial controlling the aperture in aperture priority mode or the shutter in shutter priority mode, you can change it so it's the way that you're familiar with. Just want to let you know where those things are. I hate my camera to beep because I like to be as discreet as possible, especially when you're shooting weddings, you're in a church, you don't want to be disturbing everybody around you. Please turn off that beep. I'm going to hit the menu button and go to the wrench icon, page 1. And then go down to sound effects here, third from the bottom. I'll select it, and I'm going to set the volume to 0. So no sound effects are used. You could go through and turn the sound effects on for each feature, but I just hate all sound from a camera. The last important feature here is user modes. There are a lot of features to customize, and Maybe you and your spouse like a different set of features, or maybe you use different settings for wildlife, sports, portraiture, landscapes. You can create a custom set of settings and then assign them to the user modes, which are selectable on the main dial here. You can see U1, U2, U3, U4, U5. So get all your settings ready, including aperture priority or shutter priority. Then go to the menu, camera icon, page 5 here, and the last item, save user mode. Select that, save settings, the first item here, and then I can select which user mode I want to save it to. So I'll save these as user 1 and save it. And then I'll go back, and if you want to, you can rename them. Though obviously you can't rename them up here, but as you're browsing through, it might be useful to you. This is where you really kind of need a touchscreen, but you could go through and this will delete the little trash can icon and, type sports. And then go to finish. Spores. Close enough. I've renamed that user mode. You can also see what the settings are under the checked saved settings menu item so that you can see, whether or not you have exposure compensation turned on and what your white balance is like and whether you're in aperture priority, single shutter mode, continuous mode, etc. So I'll go over some software and lenses and other accessories for your camera that you might be interested in. And inevitably, you're going to have a hard time organizing all the photos that you take with your camera, and doing light editing can be really time consuming. I found that Adobe Lightroom, while not perfect, still seems to be the best app available. It's certainly better than the software that comes with your camera, Pentax software. Anyway, check out Adobe Lightroom. It comes with Photoshop for a pretty low monthly price. Go to sdp.io/Adobe deal to check that out. And of course, I have a book about it too. You will inevitably want a second battery. One battery can get you through most days of shooting, but it depends on how you use the features. Things like having the GPS on can wear the battery down really quickly. So I would never go out without a second battery just in case. But really, I got through a couple of days of shooting without the GPS and didn't have a problem. So order a second battery, sdp.io/DLI90. Keep one in the camera, keep the other on the charger, and then when you go to travel, just grab them both. My favorite general shooting around town lens is the lens I have attached here. That's the Tamron 24-70 f2.8. Well, it's a Pentax 24-70 f2.8, but Tamron is the company that actually makes it. Pick it up at sdp.io/P24. We found it to be exceptionally sharp, and while the zoom range isn't that much, the sharpness it's really worthy of the 36 megapixel PixelShift sensor here. You will get just beautiful images out of it, and it's perfect for travel and landscapes. If you want to go super wide, for example, if you're a landscape shooter in really scenic places, or if you're shooting the streets of Europe, the Pentax 15-30, also originally made by Tamron, is the best choice here. And this is a lens that we own on the Nikon platform, and it is incredibly sharp, a world-class lens that we recommend for any system. sdp.io/P15 for that one. And if you want to do portraits or sports, my favorite lens is the Pentax 70-200 f2.8. You can pick that one up at this link here. Great lens. For wildlife, Pentax offers one really big kind of telephoto, modern telephoto, the 150-400 f4.5 to f5.6. This is the link you would grab. That's really for when you need to go beyond 200 millimeters. But if you're thinking of shooting birds or smaller animals, you'll want that extra reach. If you're going to be making prints, I have a video that can help you find the best print provider, at least in the US. Go to sdp.io/printit to watch that video. And if you're looking for kind of a starter tripod, tripods are a whole thing. You can spend $1,000 on a tripod, but I recommend most people start with this inexpensive Dolica tripod, sdp.io/tripod1. It's $50, even if it's not your only tripod, even if you later get something more serious, it still makes a great lightweight travel tripod. And you can get a variety of different SD cards here. For this camera, I would definitely get a high capacity SD cards. I keep two 128 gig SD cards in here, but it wouldn't hurt to have two 256 gig SD cards in here, especially if you're using PixelShift. Each picture, each RAW file is 150 megabytes. So that can fill up those memory cards real fast. So get a couple of big capacity cards. The slower cards are, well, you'll definitely appreciate it if you get the faster cards, because this camera still takes a while to unload the buffer. So you might consider spending the extra money for the faster cards. One last plug for my books. Stunning Digital Photography helps you get great pictures. It covers all the things that are way more important than your camera's settings, like mood, expression, storytelling, how to plan your shots, how to find the right lighting and weather, all that stuff. Well, I'd rather have you shooting full auto with a good understanding of those concepts than vice versa. But I have showed you where the buttons are, so now you can go about the rest of what you need to know to take amazing photos. Check out Stunning Digital Photography. It comes with 14 hours of video, just like my Lightroom book comes with 14 hours of video. If you want to learn the basics of editing and post-processing and make it just as easy as possible so you can get away from the computer as fast as possible. And when you're serious about your editing, you want to jump up to Photoshop. I have a book on that too. The ebook versions are all $10. The paperbacks are 20 or 25 bucks. I have a book about lenses, flashes, so you can understand all the intricacies of what things like focus breathing are and sensor stabilization, which this camera has. My book explains all that, answers all your questions. And if you're into watching videos instead of reading books, I have a whole video series here. sdp.io/store is our direct store. We ship worldwide, or you can just check out Amazon. This channel has lots of free videos, so give me a like and subscribe to see future videos, which are everything from camera reviews to photography tutorials and a weekly live show where we look at your pictures and give you personalized feedback. We also have a monthly podcast where we dig deep into the essentials of photography. Thanks so much. If you have any questions or anything you want to add to this video, add a comment down below. Bye.